I call the 2,344th meeting of the Milwaukee City Council to order. This meeting is being conducted by video conference. The public has been invited to participate in this meeting by joining the Zoom webinar or watching on the city's YouTube channel or on Comcast cable channel 30 in city limits. There will be opportunities for the public to give oral testimony during today's meeting. If you're interested in speaking, please let staff know by emailing ocr@milwaukeeoregon.gov. When it's time to take public comment, staff will monitor the email inbox, the Zoom participant list, and the Zoom chat to see if anyone would like to speak. We will take comments in the order that they are received and seen. The public may submit written comments by email to ocr@milwaukeeoregon.gov. Spanish translation services are available upon request. The public is asked to request translation and other meeting accessibility services at least 48 hours before the meeting. Contamos con servicio de traducción al español cuando sea solicitado. Se pide al público que solicite servicios de traducción y otros servicios de accesibilidad para reuniones por lo menos 48 horas antes de la reunión. Translation services are available in other languages. The public is asked to request translation and other meeting accessibility services at least 48 hours before the meeting. All right, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. Sorry about that. My computer muted itself for some reason.
We could still hear you, Mr. Mayor.
The whole time?
Yeah.
Weird. It showed it. It said unmute yourself.
I could not hear you for half of it.
No.
Oh.
Okay. Technology, it's a wonderful thing. All right. The city of Milwaukee respectfully acknowledges that our community is located on the ancestral homeland of the Clackamas people. In 1855, the surviving members of the Clackamas signed the Willamette Valley Treaty, also known as the Kalapuya etc. Treaty, with the federal government in good faith. We offer our respect and gratitude to the indigenous people of this land. Tonight's announcements. The comment period for the implementation of the comprehensive plan focusing on housing, parking, and trees continues. Learn more and provide comment by visiting Engage Milwaukee at engage.milwaukeeoregon.gov. The first Planning Commission public hearing was held on Tuesday, October 12th, and is available for viewing on the city's YouTube channel. Continued hearings will occur on October 26th and November 9th. The November 9th hearing will focus on the proposed tree code. Friends of Leading Library reopened their bookstore in mid-October, managed by a group of dedicated volunteers. The store has a wide array of books, media, and merchandise for sale. The store is located inside the Leading Library. For more information about the store or volunteering, visit www.leadingfriends.org. The City Hall Scarecrow Contest is back at City Hall this year. Come down to check out all the amazing entries and read the funny and creepy epitaphs. Thanks to all the community members and businesses who submitted a scarecrow this year. North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District is hosting a drive-through Halloween event on Friday, October 29th from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. at the North Clackamas Aquatic Park. Registration is required in advance. The event is free for district residents. For all others, it's $15 per car. All proceeds benefit the NCPRD Scholarship Program. Join us for Milwaukee's Arbor Day on Saturday, November 6th from 8:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the city's Johnson Creek building. The event will include tree-themed treats, a ceremony of tree planting, and lots of information about Milwaukee's urban forest program. In addition, volunteers will head out afterwards with the Friends of Trees to plant new trees in the city's neighborhoods. If you would like to sign up for a tree for your yard or street, visit the city's homepage at www.milwaukieoregon.gov, and a link will be available to the Friends of Trees website to sign up. For more information about each of these events and others, please visit the city's homepage, where you will find the city calendar at milwaukieoregon.gov, or call 503-786-7555, and staff will provide you with the information you need or connect you with someone who can help. Do we want to mention the downtown trick-or-treating at this point?
Yes. So we will be doing, it sounds like the Downtown Business Alliance will be doing trick-or-treating again this year, which I'm so excited about. It'll be on October 30th from 2 to 5 p.m. Please check our website later this week. If you'd like to get more information, we'll be updating the webpage at that time. But this has been a tradition for the last several years, and we had to take a break last year. So I'm so excited that DMBA decided to start that up again.
All right. I think we'll do the Davis presentation now and then go to the student, if that's okay with everybody. Okay, cool. So just to introduce it briefly, for years now, Milwaukee has been blessed to have a really unique holiday tradition here in the city that's been admirably produced by a group of people. It's called the Davis Graveyard. It's extraordinary. If you've never seen it, I recommend you go check it out. And the originator of the event is here tonight to talk to us about it, Jeff Davis.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Why don't I start off by giving you guys a little a video that the Bee, David Ashton at the Bee produced just the other day. So it's just a really short little introduction here. So I'll play it for you.
Welcome to Davis Graveyard.
So that's a little intro to what it looks like at our house at night right now. So my wife, Chris, and I have been doing this display for well over 20 years. We've lived in Milwaukee for over 30 years in this house, and started out doing a couple of decorations, and it just kind of grew over time. Right now, it's quite big, and it's a production with a whole group of people that are kind of artists, and we've kind of evolved into this art, this really cool art display that's a graveyard theme, so we named it after our last name. We've taught classes here in Milwaukee, but we've also traveled all over the country. And I think one of the things that maybe a lot of people don't know is that Milwaukee is actually known nationally for this display that we do. There are people all over the country that know about us because of the conventions that we travel to, or because of the friends and people that we associate with nationally, to get ideas about how to do newer things, and just people that are in the kind of the Halloween community. So it's kind of a big deal all over the place, and it's just kind of a unique display. We like the fact that it's free. This year we won't be doing an open house or any street closures due to the pandemic, and trying to respect everybody's interest in keeping safe. So we're not doing any of that. But we are doing a private vaccinated only fundraiser this weekend on Saturday from 7 to 9:30. It's to benefit Our House, which is an organization that's going to be merging with the Cascade Age Project here pretty quickly, that provides housing and medical services for people dealing with HIV-related illnesses. They do a dinner fundraiser that's kind of a big deal, and we said we'd like to do a dinner, and they said, well, let's just do a big cocktail hour at your place, and I think that'd be a lot better. So that's what we're doing. It's $55 a person. All of the proceeds, 100% of the proceeds, go towards Our House. We're paying for all the expenses and costs involved. You can go to davisgraveyard.com if you're interested in buying a ticket. I think we're going to sell them at the door if there's still some left. And then we'll have Halloween night the following weekend on Sunday. Like I said, we won't be closing the street or doing sort of special things like with dancers or anything like that. So everybody's still come out and enjoyed it this year. I think everybody was glad that we're back after taking a break at the Clackamas County Fairgrounds, which was fun, but it was weird putting everything over there and not having anything at our house last year. So it's nice to have it back. Is that, anybody got any questions?
Please.
Well, I thought you might want to mention that you do the effects only on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, right?
That's a good point. Yeah, we so the lights come on every day, every night at dusk, dawn. But on Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays, we have a lot of video effects and fog and sound that we do from dusk until about 11 o'clock on Friday and Saturday until 10 o'clock on Sunday. So I recommend anybody who's never been before to try to make 2 trips, come sometime during the day so that you can see some of the detail that you won't be able to see at night. So we're kind of well known for the tombstones, the funny tombstones and the pop culture tombstones. That's kind of what we like to do. And they're a little easier to read during the daytime. Or if you have little ones, bring the little ones during the day so they can see it in daylight. And then if you want to bring them back at night, it seems a little scarier at night, but trust me, it's no different. We don't do blood and gore. We don't do pop up and scare you stuff. It's just kind of a creepy feel with a little bit of humor built in. So it's good to, a lot of people who really enjoy it usually come back a couple of times so they can get a good view of everything that there is, because there's a lot of detail there.
Well, I really appreciate you coming and doing this. I've been on council now for 7 years, and it occurred to me we've never recognized Davis Graveyard, and I guess that's because we take it for granted as such a Milwaukee institution that everybody knows it. But I think it's great that you came, because I actually was working the city booth in front of City Hall this weekend during the farmers market, and there were some new people to Milwaukee, lived here a year or two, who did not know about it, and so I told them how to find it. Yeah, it really is a highlight of the fall for us here in Milwaukee. And so I'm glad you could join us today.
We should probably say where it is. We're on the corner Johnson Creek and Southeast 43rd. So if you know where Johnson Creek is, we're on the corner there of Southeast 43rd and Johnson Creek. Right.
And do you guys have an arrangement with somebody for parking down Johnson Creek Boulevard?
Most of the businesses there, the dentist, and then Spring Creek's got quite a bit of open parking, right there where the Spring Creek walkway is. And then both those businesses, especially that large industrial business, doesn't have a problem with people parking their cars and then walking around the corner. And I'd recommend doing that, to just drive around the corner over on Johnson Creek and then park in that big parking lot there and then walk up around the corner. Because our neighborhood gets pretty blocked up and it's kind of hard to find a place to park.
Right.
It's just easier that way. You can just walk up the street and view the whole, and it's just a display. There's no behind the scenes. We get asked that all the time. Can we come inside? And there's really nothing to see on the other side. Everything you want to see is out front. So, and it just takes a little time to walk through it all and see it all.
My little 6-year-old got excited when he saw it was all set up again this year.
Good. I'm glad.
Well, and I will say, I mean, it's important to emphasize that it faces 43rd, because a couple of people said, oh, I saw those tombstones on Johnson Creek Boulevard. And I'm like, there's a lot more. You need to get onto 43rd,
Yeah, the Johnson Creek sounds like a teaser.
Yeah.
We also get, you were talking about people that have asked who've never seen it before. I mean, I can't count the number of people who've come who've never seen it before. It's always their first time. We take comic cards. And so one of our traditions, it's kind of a behind the scenes tradition, is that we read the comic cards every night. It's amazing the number of people that are coming for the first time, and from all over the place. We've had people internationally show up. We've had people from multiple countries, and lots of people from other states all the time. So people that are bringing friends from out of town, or people that are just traveling and they heard about it. We get people all the time from all over the place. So I'm quite impressed with the number of people outside of our community that come see this.
Well, you're in my neighborhood, and you're always the destination for the big group of kids who trick or treat together. And my 10-year-old is really looking forward to going and seeing it this year. She did go through a little bit of a period the last few years where she was too afraid. And so she turned around before she could get to do it. But I imagine you're not doing it this year, but also just wanted to, in previous years, you've also done the dancing with the performers from the high school. And I really cannot wait to see that.
We hope to bring it back. It's a graveyard. So, I mean, Thriller is kind of a great dance to do at the graveyard.
Yeah, and the high school students do such a good job of really like bringing life to zombies, which is so great.
We have a special surprise. I won't tell you what it is, but on Halloween Day, we're going to set up a little something extra in the middle of the graveyard for everybody that comes by trick-or-treating on Halloween Day. So it'll be kind of fun. Great little extra thing.
Very cool. And I should have said this in the introduction, but both Jeff and Chris have been members of the art committee. Matter of fact, Jeff was on the original group that started the art committee here in Milwaukee, and that's part of why we get to share in a little bit of their glory in front of City Hall with the scarecrows and the headstones, and they provide the headstones. And
we do what we can to support Halloween in Milwaukee.
yeah,
it's a very creative holiday, we think.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jeff.
Sure, no problem. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks to your whole team of people that work with you too.
Thanks, I appreciate it. They will too.
All right. All right, our next item then is the Milwaukee High School Outstanding Student Award, and this will be presented by our outstanding high school principal, Carmen Gelman.
Hello, everybody. So I've been waiting for over 3 years to introduce you to this young woman. I'm so excited. So this is Alondra. And Alondra, I sent out emails, and I do this with every student, but I'm super excited. I'll share some words with you in a minute, but I'd like to share some things with you that some staff members said about you. So Alondra is a natural leader and a strong communicator. She's always willing to help and has a great sense of humor, and that's from Kate. And Alondra is a perfect example of a student who can persevere through any challenges. She works hard, has great integrity, and keeps a positive attitude regardless of her situation. Last year during the pandemic, she prioritized school while working full-time and helping support her family. She's a great representative for the Milwaukie High School. And Mr. Schaefer, way to go, Alondra. I've had the pleasure to know her since freshman year. She is funny and kind. Alondra is a hard worker and helps others when needed. She is definitely one of my forever kids. I'm proud of her and all she has accomplished, and I'm super excited to see what the future holds for her. Hugs, Auntie Cheryl. And then I'm really happy to hear that she's a student of the month. She's the first student that I've had who's been formerly in our ELD program to be a student of the month. She's exited out in 1920 school year right before we left for COVID. This is actually quite an accomplishment. We haven't had a lot of students exit out of the program, and Alondra is currently in my COTAT economics class with Altman. She is always willing to speak her mind. Yes, she is, and is a natural leader. I remember seeing her at some of the Black Lives Matter protests last year, and she was leading in the middle of the street as well. And I can't wait to see what she does after high school. That's from Mr. Norris. And lastly, Alondra came into creative writing class late and dove right into the work, showing determination and independence. She is brave and honest in her writing. She is clear on who she is and who she wants to be. She will do great things. And that's from Miss Fusen. And I just want to say, Alondra is just a natural leader. She's very determined. You have some information about her, but for those of you that came to the ribbon cutting event, she also led the folklorico dance with the girls. And I was getting really nervous, and Alondra's always like my go-to gal. Alondra, I need you. And she'll come, right? And then I'll just say, hey, I need you to get the girls together. I need a dance. Okay, Miss G, I got it, right? And that's just Alondra. And I think the thing I love the most about you is just your integrity, and it's never wavered since the moment I met you as a ninth grader when I first ran into you, week 1 of ninth grade. And Alondra has just been, she works in the office, she leads, she's just a really good person, human being. And you're awesome. I'll never, ever forget you. I'm so glad that you came into my life, and I'm so grateful for you. I adore you. Alondra.
Thank you so much. I'm like a little nervous. I'm like,
Well, tell us, Alondra, tell us what you're thinking about after school when you finish high school.
well, I've been saying it for a while now, but I actually want to be in the law enforcement. I want to go to law enforcement and let my community know that I'm there to support them no matter who or what they are. And so I want to go to CCC or PCC because they both have a very good four-year program for law enforcement, and slowly work myself up to an FBI agent.
Nice. Well, we should introduce you to Chief Straight, who's on the screen here with you. We have a really cool cadet program in Milwaukie, and I'm sure they'd love to have you involved. All right. Well, we usually let the council speak. Who wants to start? Okay, Angel.
Well, I'm dying to know who the supporter is behind you, because but thank you. I could see someone back there.
I'm Alondra's older sister.
Oh, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's exciting. I love to see her succeed.
I'm sure you're so proud of her, and we are too. And thank you, Ms. G, again, for bringing us such a beautiful human and introducing us to her. I hope that if you don't already know Chief Straight, that you'll get to know him, because if you were to start out on our force, I think we would be really lucky and honored to have you. So thank you for everything you're doing in your community. And I just love hearing you, talk about your why about joining law enforcement. I think that it's, we need more of you. So thank you for doing that and for reaching for that goal. Congratulations on today.
Thank you so much.
Lisa.
So I would absolutely say ditto to everything that Councilor Falconer just said. And I think you have this amazing smile, and we need more smiles. And it's good for police officers to have smiles. That's a great thing. And I loved that one of your teachers, your writing teacher, I take it, said, Alondra knows who she is and she knows where she wants to go. I don't think that can be said of that many high school seniors. It certainly could not have been said about me when I was a high school senior. So you're a step ahead by having, and you seem like you're very confident in yourself. So I have no doubt that you will do well in school and do well as a law enforcement officer. And I look forward to those days and seeing you maybe come back to Milwaukee.
Yes, thank you very much.
She's already connected with our officer Inman at the high school, and they've talked a few times. So she tried to do this sophomore year, I believe. Was it sophomore or freshman year?
Freshman year.
Freshman year. So, but she wasn't old enough, so we've been waiting. But so now they're connected. But she's definitely a go-getter, and you all have more information about her in front of you. So hopefully.
Kathy.
Yeah, I am so impressed with the fact that you have done all of the things that you've done and you worked full time to support your family. That's a lot of responsibility to carry. And I hope that you were able to balance that responsibility with some joy and just getting to have some fun with those additional activities, because you really need that when you're carrying that big of a load. And I really commend your concern and care for your family and your community. And I love that you feel like law enforcement is a place where you can continue to serve and make that difference. As everyone else has already said, we need that kind of energy in law enforcement, perhaps more than in any other field. It's really it's a unique understanding that I think a lot of officers and law enforcement folks have, but it's not always visible from the outside. So kudos to you for having figured that out already. I was curious what you have managed to squeeze in. I see that you were on the student advisory committee. What were you doing in addition to all of the other things you were doing?
The student.
That was to my advisory committee.
Oh, okay.
It's a student advisory committee. Remember when we meet? So Alondra's been on it for a couple years. The student advisory committee. Yeah.
Gotcha. And you've told us about that group before, so I get it. Yeah.
And well, you can tell them about it, Alondra. I was just kind of reminding her because we didn't have it last year because of the pandemic. So that's probably why she's like the student advisory committee.
Well, we talk about how we could support, the staff, the students, and we talk about how we could, change the way our perspective is for certain things, or we try to support a certain group, or we try to make, fundraisers, or we just kind of throw ideas just to better our community and Miss Dillman always like, yeah, like keep going, you know. And she's like, I love these ideas, I get together. And I also love it because it brings the students together, and we like, oh yeah, I like your idea, and we write them down, and we create more ideas, and we just try to better our community.
I love it. And it sounds like it becomes a community in and of itself of people who are really committed to that sense of community in the school, which is amazing. I was at the ribbon cutting. The dance was wonderful. And it was really special to get to be a part of that and to witness that community on display. So thank you for all of your contributions to making Milwaukie High the amazing place it is. And I wish you the best. And I hope we, you know, see you in a uniform maybe someday back here. You wouldn't be the only person who grew up in Milwaukie and served the community in the police department, for sure.
Thank you very much.
Desi.
Congratulations, Alondra. I mean, everybody's said a lot already, so I won't say a whole lot more, but I will ask you one question. So it says you're going to graduate early. That's no easy feat.
Yeah, I'm gonna graduate early, but I get classes because it looks really good when you're going into college. So I just might stay a little bit longer and be with you.
Well, when you are ready, I know you have high school counselors, but there are tons of scholarships out there. And if you ever need help finding anything, let me know. That's my job. And I can help you find free money. There's a ton of it out there. It's not easy to sift through all of it, but I'd be more than happy to sit down with you and help you find all that free money out there.
Yes, please. I'll definitely keep in contact with you, you know, because I am trying to reach that goal, but also I don't have a lot of money for it, so.
But, yep. Congratulations again.
Thank you very much.
Well, Alondra, it's one would think from these presentations that Milwaukie High School is just chock-a-block with extraordinary people, and that must be the case. We are always impressed, and you are no exception to that rule. I really, truly do hope that you can come back and be a police officer in Milwaukie as a stepping stone to the FBI. I think that would be really cool. I'm sure the chief will be happy to talk to you if you want to have conversations and learn more.
Thank you, Mayor.
Absolutely.
He's a really good guy.
Yep.
All right. Scott, if you could put up I don't have there we go. The City of Milwaukie is proud to recognize for outstanding student achievement in academics, civic engagement, and extracurricular activities at Milwaukie High School, Alondra Aranda Martinez. Let it be known to all that on this 19th day of October, 2021, the City Council of the City of Milwaukie, a municipal corporation in the County of Clackamas in the state of Oregon, recognized this student as an excellent example of the bright future of this community and nation.
Yay!
Thank you very much for supporting me, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. And let us know if anything that we can do to help.
And Alondra, this video will be sent to me, and then I will send it to you, and we'll just connect tomorrow at school.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Great to meet you.
Thank you. It was great to meet you guys too.
Lisa, you're not the only one with a cat climbing issue, I see.
I thought I closed the door. Sorry.
Mine is sleeping, or that would be happening now here too.
All right. So the next thing, an update. Any update to offer besides that you had a really cool grand opening?
My grand opening was cool because it was kids, a lot of kids, and the Brown sisters, and a lot of good people, So that was really cool. But no, I mean, just trying to get back into the swing of things where kids are settling in, and you know, the honeymoon is over. So we're like doing a lot of reteaching. I always say, you know, that the whole saying of it takes a village to raise a child, and our students have been missing half of their village for 18 months pretty much. And so it's just relearning, reteaching, recreating culture and all of that. And especially with our younger kiddos, our 9th and 10th graders who haven't really been around us much. And our juniors and seniors are doing fairly well. Our 9th and 10th graders are doing well too, but it's just reintroducing the school and kind of just the whole dynamics for being back in school full day, right, every day. And so, but it's fun to have kids around. It's super exciting to just be around our students, and it makes the work, even though it's a lot of work, you know, just running a school in general, but being with kids makes it easier because that's what we're there for. So other than that, we're finally done with most of the construction stuff. You know, which is really, I'm really grateful for, because that was a long road, but it's a beautiful building. If you got to go inside when you were there to see it, it's really beautiful. And things are just going well. I mean, you know, we're doing a lot of upgrades and just upgrading like what we're doing with just athletics and activities and performing arts and all of that stuff. So it's all coming together. So I'm really grateful.
Very cool. Well, it was a really good event, really, really beautiful event. And the chair of the board gave a great speech.
Yes.
It was extraordinary. It was cool.
She's a wonderful speaker. Yes, she's amazing. So if you didn't get a chance to hear Libra Ford, she is someone you want to listen to. Running for county commissioner, I believe.
Yeah, we all might get an opportunity to work with her even more often.
Yes.
We're lucky.
Yes. Alondra, Chief Straight just sent you a comment on the side. I don't know if you saw it, but it says, congratulations, Alondra, very impressive. Officer Inman has talked about you. So see?
Yeah, I just saw I was going to respond, but thank you so much. I really want to join the cadet program, so, you know, work myself up there. So I appreciate it so much.
It definitely sounds like you're on the right track for sure, obviously. And Principal Gelman has a keen eye for talent and character, as does Officer Inman. So you're doing all the right things, and you will definitely get there.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And I will connect Alondra to you, Desi, and all of that good stuff. So, all right. Thank you all for your support. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Our next item is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, the proclamation. I think we have a couple of guests here to help present. Sarah Groschel and Kat Koch. How do you pronounce it?
Koch.
Koch. Okay. And then the chief, Luke Straight. And then I'll read the proclamation.
Good evening, Mayor Gamba, council, and members of the public. I'm Chief Luke Straight with the Milwaukie Police Department. As a city, we wanted to take a moment this evening to recognize Domestic Violence Awareness Month and the challenges this issue presents. It's important to reflect on the incredible impact domestic violence can have on victims, children and families, and also to highlight some of the amazing people who work on these incredibly important issues. On average, the Milwaukie Police respond to about 1,400 total calls each month and generally respond to reports of domestic violence, unfortunately, every day. Domestic Violence Awareness Month was launched in 1987 as a way to recognize the importance of the issue and begin to work more collaboratively around prevention, awareness, and support services, as well as the investigation and prosecution of the abusers. Our department does recognize how important our role is in this, and we consider it a serious priority. We work really hard to be excellent at de-escalating, investigating, and prosecuting domestic violence when it's appropriate. It's also just as important to be great at accessing the services which exist to help community members. In honor of this month, we took several hours to meet with staff from Clackamas Women's Services today to get a refresher on some of the services they provide to our community, which include shelters and victims advocates. They have an incredible program. I'd like to introduce Kat and Sarah both from Clackamas Women's Services. They dedicate their lives specifically to this issue, and it was really an honor to meet with them today and explore different ways we can continue to support each other. Kat and Sarah, would you mind introducing yourselves better and then talking just a little bit more about your program?
Sure, I can start now that the cat seems to have left me alone for a moment. My name is Sarah Groeschel, and I work at Clackamas Women's Services. I am the Community-Based Services Program Director. And I am also very pleased to be here because I'm also a resident of Milwaukie and have a daughter that goes to school right around the corner from Milwaukie High School at Milwaukie El Puente. And I'm very pleased. I've been at Clackamas Women's Services for only a month now, so I am still learning, and I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Kat, to share a little bit more about the services we provide. But I know that we're just so happy to have the chief and many staff members. I think there were 8 of you in total today out, and we just love seeing everybody and being able to share what we do and build those relationships, because that's key to the work that we do. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. And thank you, Chief Straight. We, as Sarah said, just want to echo how grateful we are to have been able to spend the day with you and your team and talk more about partnerships within our organizations. And thanks to all of you tonight for being here. My name's Kat. I'm one of the program directors over at Clackamas Women's Services. And just like Sarah said, we are so thrilled that we're able to join the proclamation tonight and hear about these amazing students and the really cool things that are happening in the community of Milwaukie. And so appreciative to your all's commitment to bringing awareness around Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I did just want to give a little bit about some of the services that Clackamas Women's Services provide in case you or someone that you love might be interested or needing services. We're really proud to serve folks in Milwaukie and also the greater Clackamas County area. We provide services for a number of folks. Most of the time we're looking at serving folks who are impacted by domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking often comes up within the population that we're working with, trafficking, as well as elder abuse. And do just want to make sure you all know that we serve folks of all ages, any gender, any kind of citizen status, or if folks are self-identifying as survivors, we welcome all of them into our services. And we serve folks in a number of different programs. So we have 7 programs across Clackamas Women's Services that are kind of split into 2 branches. The first being our shelter and housing program. So we have an emergency shelter and transitional housing program, which also houses our 24-hour crisis line, and we facilitate a confidential text and chat line as well. And then on the community-based services side, which is located over at the Family Justice Center in Oregon City, we have our advocacy services, so we can support folks getting protective orders, doing safety planning, navigating systems, and connecting to resources. We also have counseling and support groups, a program specific for youth and children, which includes groups and summer camps and things like that. We have a violence prevention education program that's in the schools K through 12.
as well as legal support services and a Latina services program that specifically facilitates a promotoris program. So really when we're in the community wanting to provide a variety of services to ensure that we're meeting the needs of the community. And so there are a number of ways that folks can get in contact with us. Folks can give us a call on our crisis line, which is 24 hours. They could also contact us through the confidential text and chat line, or just coming over to the Family Justice Center to see us. We are open Monday through Thursday, 8 to 4, and on Fridays, 8 to 1. And we are seeing folks in person and would love to connect with you. Or if you have folks in your community that are needing services, we're happy to help. And I just want to, again, acknowledge just how incredible it is to be here with all of you. So thankful we got to spend the time we did with folks on the Milwaukie Police Department today, and just really love being part of your community, and just so grateful for the continued support that you all offer and the awareness that you're raising for survivors in our community.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Kat.
Thank you.
We did bring our command staff. We brought a patrol sergeant, Crystal Hill, Detective Sergeant Tom Garrett, our two newest hires, as well as a few other people. So it was a great opportunity for us to revisit all the services that CWS provides and make sure that we're not missing any opportunities to use those to benefit our community. So we really did appreciate the time they took for us today.
Well, thank you all for the presentation. Thank you for the work that you do, more importantly. Once again, you know, I'm always so proud of our police department and the extra steps they take to be as powerfully positive a force in our city as they are, and as is possible to be, really. And this is just another example of that, and I really appreciate it, Chief. So I will read the proclamation. Whereas domestic violence is a tragic and serious crime that affects millions of Americans of all races, ages, gender, and income levels, and whereas repercussions of domestic violence can threaten our communities on a daily basis, and trauma related to domestic violence may result in long-term adverse effects on survivors' physical and mental health and well-being, and whereas domestic violence costs this nation billions of dollars annually in medical expenses, police and court costs, shelters, foster care, sick leave, absenteeism, and non-productivity. And whereas during the month of October, domestic violence advocacy organizations, victim-serving professionals, system partners, communities, and allies come together to unify and support those working to end violence, support survivors, raise community awareness of the devastating effects of domestic violence, honor and support those who have survived, and mourn those we have lost. Now, therefore, I, Mark Gamba, Mayor of the City of Milwaukie, a municipal corporation in the County of Clackamas in the state of Oregon, do hereby proclaim October 2021 to be Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and recommend that all Milwaukie community members work toward the elimination of violence in all forms. I just, you know, this is a particularly egregious issue, and I've known several people personally and closely that have suffered through this, and it is devastating, and the stories are horrific, and the way it changes lives is unbelievable. And anything that we can do and that your organization is doing to eliminate it and to protect the folks who are affected by it is extraordinary. I just want to thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right. Our next item is the Barlow Trail 175th Anniversary of Proclamation. This will be presented by the Milwaukie Historical Society's Greg Heemer.
Hello, everybody, and I'll let Scott throw up the slide presentation there. And now I got to figure out how to get to my deal. All right. So Milwaukie Historical Society, owners and operators of the world's largest museum dedicated to the history of Milwaukie, Oregon, the Milwaukie Museum, located at 3737 Southeast Adams Street, open Saturdays 1 to 5 p.m., is proud to present the proclamation commemorating the 175th year of existence of the Barlow Trail or Barlow Road. Slide. Milwaukie Museum believes it's important to tell all historical accounts and perspectives of all the people that have and will inhabit this land we now call Milwaukie. It is important to note that the white settlers from the east contributed to diseases and death to the Clackamas people, and the remaining were forced onto reservations. It is also important to note that the Donation Land Claim Act of 1850 allowed white men to settle property unsurveyed and without regard to legal subdivision, and black men and all women were excluded from owning land. With that said, the white settlers that crossed the Barlow Trail, like Henderson Llewellyn, Mary Campbell Llewellyn, and Lot Whitcomb, along with countless others, created Milwaukie, its foundations of industry and fruit orchards that helped form the West. These white settlers created the town we all call home and enabled the West to be what it is today. If you would like to view our newest Letting Library lecture series entitled They Came Over the Barlow Trail, a program featuring Henderson, Mary, and Lot, check it out on our Milwaukie Heritage channel on YouTube. Thank you, City of Milwaukie, Letting Library, and Willamette Falls Studios for being our sponsors. Slide. The Barlow Road, originally named Mount Hood Road, was built in 1846 by Sam Barlow and Philip Foster with authorization of the Provisional Legislation of Oregon and served as the last overland segment of the Oregon Trail. Its construction allowed covered wagons to cross the Cascade Range and reach the Willamette Valley, which they had previously been nearly impossible. Even so, it was by far the most harrowing 100 miles of the nearly 2,000-mile Oregon Trail. The Barlow Road begins at Wascopim Mission and heads south to Tye Valley, then turns west and roughly parallels the White River on the north, and then west, crosses the south shoulder of Mount Hood at Barlow Pass, follows Camp Creek and the Sandy River for some way, and finally leads to Oregon City. Slide. When Sam Barlow arrived at the Dalles late September 1845, as many as 60 families were waiting for river transport. The expected wait was more than 10 days, and the transportation exorbitantly priced. Local inquiries turned up little information about traveling over the mountains, except the water, timber, and grazing were plentiful. Barlow and H.M. Knighton set out to determine the feasibility of a route seeking a more expedient and less expensive way to enter the Willamette Valley. On October 1st, 1845, Barlow and 3 men scouted ahead of their company and entered Mount Hood's foothills from the east near Tye Creek and about 35 miles from the mouth of the Deschutes River. They came within perhaps 12 miles of Mount Hood. They thought they had a glimpse of the Willamette Valley and learned from the indigenous people in the region of a trail leading to Oregon City. The clearing party made it to the top of the ridge, now known as Barlow Pass, where they were effectively lost. Barlow, Palmer, and a man named Henderson Porter Locke hiked the south face of Mount Hood west of Palmer Glacier to scout a westward route off the mountains. Palmer, in the better physical condition than his companions, climbed high on the Zigzag Glacier and took detailed notes on the surrounding ridges and rivers. Barlow's group followed the Sandy River west on foot. Near the present-day city of Sandy, they turned south to reach Eagle Creek and Philip Foster's farm near present-day Clackamas. Slide. In 1849, a military wagon destined for Oregon forts passed over the road. It carried 250 tons of munitions and more than 400 wagons pulled by 1,700 mules. From the beginning of the Barlow Road to the camp, the soldiers made at what has been known since Government Camp. They abandoned 45 wagons after dozens of mules died of starvation. The direction of travel was effectively one way until 1861, when a better road was blasted through Laurel Hill. Despite the expense and difficulties of passage, the road was very popular, with more than 1,000 immigrants and approximately 150 wagons recorded in the first year alone of operation. Approximately 3/4 of the settlers entering the Willamette Valley traveled the Barlow Road. Slide. Mr. Mayor, after a short video from former Governor Barbara Roberts, will you please read the proclamation?
Hold on just a minute, I gotta share. Yeah, come on. Share the sound, share sound, okay.
Hi, this is Governor Barbara Roberts, a descendant of the Oregon Trail, a member of the Sons and Daughters of Oregon Pioneers, and I want to wish you a very special 175th anniversary of the Barlow Trail and all of the descendants that are part of that program.
All right. Whereas Milwaukee's history from all perspectives is important to understand, observe, and recognize, as commemorating the 175th anniversary of the Barlow Trail is an important part of our nation, state, and city histories. And whereas the city recognizes that the land known today as Milwaukie was inhabited by the Clackamas people until fur traders, missionaries, and white settlers introduced diseases that decimated the Clackamas from an estimated population of 4,650 in 1805 to 78 people by 1853. Whereas the city recognizes that the Donation Land Claim Act of 1850 promoted homestead settlement in the Oregon Territory on unsurveyed lands to select claims without regard to legal subdivision and allowed white men to own 320 acres if single and 640 acres if married. And whereas the city recognizes that the Donation Land Claim Act forced the native populations to leave their ancestral lands and be placed onto reservations and excluded Black people and single women from the right to own property. And whereas the city recognizes that 2021 marks the 175th year of the Barlow Trail, which helped convey white settlers along a long and unforgiving journey which began near the Mississippi River and followed the Oregon Trail, with many taking the Barlow Trail to reach Oregon City to settle lands and begin an expedition of hard work, dedication, and forming the American West into a part of the United States. And whereas because settlers like Henderson Llewellyn, Mary Campbell Llewellyn, and Lot Whitcomb, who brought fruit trees and industry along the trail, Milwaukie and the West prospered and became the community that we call home today. Now, therefore, I, Mark Gamba, Mayor of the City of Milwaukie, a municipal corporation in the County of Clackamas in the state of Oregon, do hereby proclaim October 2021 as the Barlow Trail 175th Commemoration Month in Milwaukie and encourage the public understanding of the importance of all perspectives on histories for future generations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. All right. The next item is a memorial proclamation for our former city attorney, Tim Ramis. And this will be presented by our current city attorney, Justin Garrick, and city manager, Ann Ober.
Justin, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Oregon's legal community, and indeed our community as a whole, unfortunately lost a valued member this past week when attorney Tim Ramis passed away on October 13th. Tim honorably represented the city of Milwaukee as city attorney for nearly 4 decades and skillfully guided the city through many challenges over the years. Many current and past staff members worked with Tim on city business during his tenure as city attorney. I personally had the pleasure of working with Tim in private practice for 5 to 6 years, and it was through Tim that I was first introduced and worked for the city of Milwaukee. Tim's calm demeanor and skillful lawyering benefited not only his clients, but also the scores of Oregon attorneys that worked with him. There aren't many municipal or land use lawyers in the state that haven't crossed paths with Tim at one time or another. It's fitting that the city memorialize his life and accomplishments through the proclamation, as he's a big part of the last 4 decades of city business. He will be missed.
Thanks, Tim. Justin. When I got here, Tim was my right hand, and I was so incredibly lucky to have him at the table with me as we were learning how to be a team, me and this council. And I just really appreciate the gifts that he gave to me around the Lenning Library, the amount of time and effort he put into making that building a reality for us tonight. And actually, I wanted to save this until I talked about him tonight. We actually were just awarded the AIA Regional Award for the build of the Lenning Library this last week. And I think it's just absolutely appropriate that A, his funeral is on Election Day, and B, that the gifts that he gave to the city of Milwaukee will continue for such a long time. Without him, the letting may not have happened. So thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to put this onto the agenda quickly after his passing. And several of us will be attending the funeral in the coming days. So I know that staff was heartbroken, those who had worked with him for a long time, to learn of his passing. And we just feel really lucky to have had him in the past. And I know that we're lucky in what he did for Justin in the years before Justin got here too. So I think he's played an integral role in my career and in Justin's, and we really appreciate it.
Tim was obviously this city attorney as I was on planning commission and then first on council, and I learned a lot about land use laws, about the ins and outs of city code from Tim. And he was always kind and generous and just a sweet guy, really a good person. All right. So the proclamation, whereas Tim Victor Ramis was a highly respected member of the Portland Metropolitan Region legal community, and whereas Tim Ramis served as the city of Milwaukee city attorney for 4 decades, beginning in 1988 with his appointment as the city's interim city attorney and running through multiple legal service contracts, which had been renewed in 2018, which had last been renewed in 2018. And whereas City Attorney Ramis faithfully represented the city in all matters of legal disputes and procedures, providing honest and unbiased advice to the City Council and staff. And whereas City Attorney Ramis represented the highest level of integrity and commitment in his representation of municipal clients and the attainment of fair and appropriate legal results. And whereas City Attorney Ramis was a mentor and advisor to Milwaukee mayors, council members, and staff over 4 decades of service, and assisted this community by navigating numerous challenges while consistently striving for solutions to legal issues that best serve the community. Now, therefore, I am Mark Gamba, Mayor of the City of Milwaukee, a municipal corporation in the County of Clackamas and State of Oregon, do hereby memorialize the life and accomplishments of Tim Victor Ramis, the city's faithful city attorney for 4 decades.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
There had been some suggestion of trying to do something in honor of Tim, such as planting a tree or something. Do we want to discuss that here, or is that a discussion for another time?
Sure, we can discuss it here. It's appropriate. I think a tree.
I mean, I think, I think that would be a fine memorial, and have a plaque or something that identifies it for him. I didn't know if we really have a policy about how to do that, because that's come up a couple of other times too. But we should have a policy for how to do that, because we do want trees planted, and that's it supports our supports our goal. It's a way to honor people like Tim, and as well as move forward on a city goal.
So one of the things that we have talked about in the past when we talked about trees is that they die. Some of them go away. Sometimes it's nice to have something that is in perpetuity. When it was Lynn, we did a rock at Wichita Park. If you're open to it, we're going to be, I think tonight, at least for me, my experience with Tim, really, a lot of it was around the Learning Library. And we're about to undertake Scott Park as a part of that project, concluding a lot of work that he put into making that thing a reality. And I'd like to have that discussion with the team that's working on the park design, and just see if there's maybe something there that we could do before we make a commitment about it being a tree or something else. I think a 40-year servant to the city of Milwaukee has earned us thinking about it and working on it. So if you're okay with that, we'll bring you back something at the design phase.
I really appreciate that. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I guess I would just add maybe, sort of my own feelings about a tree versus a rock or something other.
A bench or something.
Yeah. And I guess I would just suggest that in theory, a bench or a rock may last longer, but trees actually live quite a bit longer if you let them. And
totally.
So I'm not really sure that in practice, the rock would last as long as the tree. We see plaques move, and in fact, at the library, there were people who had donated money to previous updates, and those names have since been removed, and I don't even think it had been 40 years. So I guess I would just add that as you're considering it and taking recommendations, that would be my feedback.
Absolutely. And we have a new parks person who's doing the design work. His name is Adam. He's going to be spending more time with you all in the coming year. So I'll just send him an email tonight, and it'll be a statement that we'd like to honor Tim, that there has been an expressed interest in a tree, but that you all are open to other possibilities. And we'll see where y'all land. This will be your decision.
I agree. I think a stately tree like a sequoia or something would be a really cool monument. Am I recalling correctly, Justin, that Tim tried a case before the Supreme Court?
Yes, he was the lead counsel on Tigard v. City of Dolan, which is a landmark case in the takings jurisprudence.
Yeah, so I think something stately is called for. All right. Thanks, everyone. This is the part of the agenda during which council will hear community member statements regarding city business. Those wishing to speak, please email ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov, raise your hand in Zoom, or write a comment in the Zoom chat to indicate you wish to speak. Before you make your comments, please state your name and city residence for the record. If you would like the city to follow up with you, please submit your contact information to ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov. This council has other business items on the agenda this evening. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each. Because information provided during the community comments may be new, the city manager will respond at the next council meeting to those comments that require follow-up. Before we begin, is there a follow-up from the October 5th community comments, Ms. Ober?
There is not.
Scott, are you seeing anybody wanting to comment?
Mr. Mayor, I see no emails and I see no hands raised and nothing in the chat.
All right, well, we'll go through the consent agenda and let us know if something comes in. Tonight's consent agenda includes minutes of the City Council for September 14th, 2021 study session, September 21st, 2021 work session, and September 21st, 2021 regular session. Does any member of council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda. Excuse me.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously. All right, City Hall project goals adoption, a resolution. This will be presented by our city recorder, Scott Stoffer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'll keep it quick, but I did prepare a quick PowerPoint just to revisit the topic real quick. So this evening, this is a follow-up to a discussion that the city's had for a couple of years. It's regarding the next use of the City Hall site. And council most recently heard an update from staff about a month ago. So I won't be laboring these points, but just to refresh the memory. There are two projects ongoing at the same time regarding the current and next City Hall for the city. And there's an update, or the calendar that we showed a month ago, not much has changed. We probably moved the "we are here" thing down a little bit, but we are at the point where tonight we're asking the city council to adopt the goals for the project. The goals for the project, as you might recall, that were formulated with the help of our City Hall Blue Ribbon Committee and vetted through 2 online open houses. And then we also had some opportunity to take feedback this last summer during Carefree Sunday. And the goals were then presented by the committee last spring and then represented about a month ago. And tonight the action requested is that council formally adopt those so that they may be part of the request for proposal process, which staff intends to initiate next month and bring to council very soon. So here's a reminder what the goals are. I won't read everything, but their goals are the site, City Hall site will create a destination. Historic preservation will be taken into account. Minority and women in business enterprises contracting will be sought out, as will sustainable practices, and open space on the site will be maintained. And so where we are in terms of you may recall there is a quit claim deed on the site placed on it by a predecessor body of the North Clackamas School District. The city has, as reported a month ago, the city reissued our request that the school district release that deed. And as of today, we do not have a date set for the school board to reconsider that item. And I think when I finish my presentation here, there may be an update perhaps from Ms. Ober or other members of council on that. But very soon we'll be initiating the RFP process. So that's all that. And a lot of that you saw last month. So the ask from staff is that tonight council make a motion to adopt the goals formally so that they can be included in the RFP. But perhaps before that motion is taken, Ann, I don't remember if you or if a member of council wanted to say something about the state of the request to the North Clackamas School District.
I think I'm going to defer to the elected officials on this, but I appreciate the opportunity, Scott.
I think Angel last served on that Blue Ribbon Committee, so I think it would be appropriate for her to say something.
Yeah, I didn't know if anybody had questions. I wasn't anticipating that we would, but I thought we might do that. But I certainly want to acknowledge all of the people who served on the Blue Ribbon Committee, including former Councilor Wilda Parks, who preceded me on the committee, and she continued to serve on and participate in those in those committees, those meetings via Zoom, even after I became the liaison. And also just wanted to recognize the school district board director, McVeigh, for his participation, for representing the school district's position and considerations in that process, and thank him for his dedication and commitment to joining all of those meetings and asking great questions and providing valuable input that helped to shape these goals. And so I'm really excited to pass these. I think that there was a lot of really great conversation with a broad cross section of our community, the school district members, just members at large, business owners in Milwaukee, folks from a wide variety of backgrounds, providing really important feedback and perspective on this process and what the vision for the future of our beloved City Hall building would be.
I think the other thing that might be important to sort of refresh people's memory is City Hall building is an old building, and as with all old buildings, it has some issues, and it's going to require some investment to be whatever it becomes. And it's important to this council, I think to the city at large, that it becomes something special and remain kind of a centerpiece of our downtown. And the likelihood of that is higher the easier it is for someone to do that. I know there already of one party of interest that I think would be very exciting to both the city and the school board, if we can make it happen. But it's going to require that this be as easy a transition as possible. Lisa.
I wanted to talk some about next steps. I don't know. I mean, I'm fine with the resolution. We can move forward with the resolution and then talk about next steps, or do you want me to talk about that now?
I think we'd love the feedback.
Pardon?
We would love the feedback.
Okay.
So if you want to start now, that'd be great.
Okay, great. I brought it up before that I think we want to, when we get to RFP stage, we want to, I guess my concern is that there are potential future uses such as arts center uses that, some members of the community are very interested in, that need more lead time to come up with money, to come up with plans than maybe a conventional developer needs. So I hope that we can somehow build a longer RFP period, or perhaps build in an advance notice to people ahead of the RFP, maybe at the time when we do the surplus or whatever, just to give sort of people who aren't necessarily professional developers time to get their ducks in a row. I will also note, I reached out to two of my neighbors who were on the committee, and they both thought that one expressed surprise that this was on tonight and was disappointed that the committee members weren't noticed. I think she would have liked to participate. And the other said that she thought she was going to be part of an RFP committee, and maybe that's still down the line. Maybe that's still to happen. But anyway, I do think there are some community members who, want to do their own outreach too. So I just want to make sure we don't build something that's just targeted to the professional developers.
That to your point, Councillor Beatty, I believe it's Donna Baton and April Grax from the Island Station neighborhood, and Donna represented business interests. They both volunteered to be the Blue Ribbon Committee's representatives on the RFP committee, and that's still very much the plan.
Okay, great.
I think this is notice that we are going to be moving forward, and that's.
But how do we reach out to how do we give tools to people who want to reach out to the art community, say, or whatever the other potential uses might be?
Can I jump in? Do you mind? So I have just started to get some phone calls in of folks that are interested, like developers, and I've been trying to get those scheduled so that I'm meeting with them and Joseph, like November 1st, kind of having some of those pre-conversations before the RFP is finalized. And then, and so if there are specific arts groups or anyone that you just have on your list of like, I wish they knew about this, could you just go talk to them? If you could just email me that or call me or whatever, I'm happy to have I'm having some of those conversations now, and it just helped inform what we kind of put into the proposal to begin with. And I would need to have that before we actually release it. So if you've got folks that you know, I kind of just rather go ahead and call them. And then in terms of the 6 weeks, I think that's fine. I mean, I think if that gives people more time to put a better proposal together, there's no concern on my end of that. I can't imagine Joseph would be concerned about that, but I can talk to him about it when he gets here. But that seems like an easy thing to commit to. And then in terms of tonight, I guess I'll just say sorry. We have been pretty focused on the school board and the deed issue, I think, for the past couple weeks and months. And so I've had a little bit of blinders on. So it's just an apology that if folks feel they were kind of left out of the outreach these past couple of weeks, it's because we've been focused on that, trying to clear that last hurdle. But would love to get the word out more broadly. And definitely, as Scott mentioned, the two folks that we've already made commitments to participate will be at the table when that part of the process happens.
Great. Well, I will ask them, I will ask them to contact you, Kelly.
Yeah, please. I mean, the more people I talk to, probably the better, just so I can understand where everybody's coming from.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Anybody else?
I think that's the end of this part of the discussion. So I just want to call something out real fast. This has been an incredible lift. I just want to call out that this process all happened in the middle of COVID with an online system that was pretty new to us, trying to figure out how to do community engagement. This was our first posting on Engage Milwaukie. I really deeply appreciate the staff leaned into the challenges of COVID and didn't let this project stop. That they kept pushing this forward and that we've carried it to this point. I'm really excited to be sitting here tonight. So Scott Stoffer, of course, gets a huge amount of those kudos. Allison Wicks gets a huge amount of those kudos, even if she is way too cool and now working for Metro, and I'm so excited for her. But the two of them really did exceptional work. And then I just wanted to thank Kelly for stepping in and carrying this stuff over the line. Kelly has been wearing, I know we joke, but her 15 hats, and without her, we wouldn't be here tonight. So I really deeply appreciate Kelly stepping in and making sure that this got over the line. Onward. We've got another couple months worth of work, but this is going to be released and we will be doing an RFP process, making some really important decisions as a council and a community about where we want to go. So thank you so much for everyone making this process happen. And to the three staff people, thank you for all of your lift.
Great job, team. All right.
I can make a motion.
I would love that. Thank you.
I move to approve the resolution approving the project goals for the City Hall site.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the resolution approving the project goals for City Hall site. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Our Our next item of business is the Oak Lodge governance options, a presentation. This will be presented by Beth Goodman and Nick Papanuck with Eco Northwest.
And as they're coming in, I'm promoting them to the panel. There are a few other folks. I'll maybe look to Beth and Nick to let me know who else from the attendees list, if you can look at it and let me know who you'd like to join.
I think Cole should probably be promoted.
Okay, and then
Mitra also.
And Mitra, okay.
Please.
For Cole, I'll ask Cole. There's two of you in there, and I understand sometimes people watch on the phone. And can you raise your hand? There you go. That one. I'll promote that one to the panel. Thank you. And who's presenting? Who needs to be co-host so they can share their screen? Is that part of it?
Please make Beth co-host.
Beth, okay. There you go.
Well, thank you very much for having us here tonight. Before we get going, Anne, was there anything you wanted to say by way of introduction of this?
No, I really appreciate that the team contacted us early on in the work to ask about how the city could provide information and be engaged in this process. I also really appreciate, though, that they took it and left and worked on this outside of the city. Just for anybody who's watching tonight, I just want to make sure it's exceptionally clear. This was driven by the community members of Oak Grove. This is a discussion. This was actually an agreement early on that we made that because so much of the Milwaukie staff time was going to be used in this process, we asked just to get an update at the end so that people knew where that time and effort went. So this is largely information and for council to ask any questions of both the consultants and the community members who are involved. Thank you especially to Beth. She was exceptional.
Oh, thank you, Anne. You stole my thunder there. I was planning on thanking you and Laura and other staff members who helped us on this. I think we've got a much better analysis for the community members because of that. So thank you very much. Before I get going, I would like to introduce our team. I'm Beth Goodman. I was the project lead from Echo Northwest. We've got Nick Papanuck from Tiberius Solutions, not Echo Northwest. And we've got Mitra, who honestly, I won't butcher her last name. I apologize, Mitra, who is from the community. And then we also have Cole, who is also from the community. And all four of us will be presenting through this. So there'll be a little bit of switch off. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can see the presentation. And give me one moment while I rearrange you guys so I can see all your smiling faces also. What we'd like to do is run through the presentation, and if you have questions about not understanding something that was said, please go ahead and interrupt. But otherwise, I think we'd like to take questions at the end. Is that okay with you? And Mr. Mayor, how do you would you like to tell us if somebody needs to ask a question, or would you like us to simply monitor?
No, I can. I'll put your presentation on a different screen so I can watch people's faces and let you know.
Thank you so much. So Mitra and Cole, here you are.
Great. Thank you so much, Beth, and thank you so much, City Council and Mayor Gamba. My name is Mitra. My last name is pronounced Anusharovani. And we are really excited to have this opportunity to chat with you here. So this report that we commissioned, that was released just a few weeks ago, and we are so proud to present this data to our community. And this is going to be the first time that the combined communities of Oak Grove and Jennings Lodge have data presenting a comparative analysis of multiple governance options. So I'd like to talk briefly tonight about who we are as Oak Lodge Governance Project and why it is that we're so interested in stewarding this project. So our team is comprised of the 10 individuals that you see here, and we've been working on this endeavor for 1.5 to 2.5 years. And our team includes the following folks, myself and Cole, obviously, Nathan Breitenfeld, Jane Civiletti, Tom Civiletti, Eleanor Hunter, Chip Janger, Valerie Chapman, Joseph Edge, who I believe most of you know, and Nate Ember. And these pictures are illustrating us in real life away from our Zoom screens, doing things that we love within our community. And many of us are outside. Some of us are with our families, both in human form and our fur family members. And some of us are taking advantage of our transportation options. Now, while our group doesn't represent the total breadth of diversity and experiences within Oak Lodge, our team does span generations, orientations, ethnicities, and numbers of years lived here. Some of our folks have generational roots within the Oak Lodge area, and some of our team has planted within the last 5 years. It's notable that within these perspectives, there is a collective agreement amongst us that Oak Lodge can do better. And that is what motivates this project. That said, the key thing that unites us is our dedication to Oak Lodge. Now, if we didn't have this affinity for our area, we wouldn't be spending the hundreds of hours and now quite literally years of our lives to this volunteer project. So the following slides are some examples where members of our Oak Lodge residents deserved better. I'm going to go through them quickly here, but each of our team members wrote op-eds to the Clackamas Review, further detailing the issues I'm mentioning, and you can read those on our website. Beth, next slide. Go back, there we go. So here we have two examples, the Boardman Wetlands Nature Park Playground in Jennings Lodge and the intersection of Courtney and River Road at Oak Grove. In these two particular instances, members of the Oak Lodge Governance Project in the past have tried to advocate for common sense pedestrian safety and bike bike measures in areas that are notoriously unsafe for both, bicyclists and pedestrians. And those advocacy efforts have fallen on deaf ears, and the county has yet to take action to address either location. Next slide. Now, here we have a photo of a tree canopy, and something that Oak Lodge residents and City of Milwaukie residents share is a deep love of our tree canopy. And despite loud, passionate advocacy requesting tree canopy and green space protections, the county has yet to still take action to try to protect our tree canopy. And I know that many of you know the intricacies of the other photo on this slide, the Evangelical Retreat Center. Now, for those uninitiated, Clackamas County approved a massive housing development of exclusively non-affordable housing in Jennings Lodge against substantial public outcry. In this development, there was no opportunity to maintain any of the land on the historic property, which happened to also host 300 irreplaceable trees, as open green space or as a park, despite overwhelming community feedback desiring affordable housing and green space. Next slide. Now here we have the very recent Park Avenue Community Project. Over 2.5 years, a group of hyper-local residents supported by county directives, staff support, and $250,000 towards consultants was tasked with redefining land use in the half-mile around the Park Avenue Max Station. Despite county staff approval and the committee meeting every threshold set by the county to move forward with their recommendations, the recommendations were halted and dismissed by the Board of County Commissioners, ostensibly because there's no incentive to provide vision and leadership in a small corner, literally 0.5 miles of a county larger than the state of Rhode Island, when faced with just simply the normal challenges of change and growth. And finally, I'll end with car lots. There are so many used car lots in our area and so very little business diversity. No one who lives here is stoked about this unless you happen to own one of the used car lots. And the truth is that most of those used car lot owners don't actually live in our area. So it's our belief that most, if not all, of these aforementioned issues would have yielded different outcomes had we had a governance structure more closely aligned with our community. So connected by our shared love for the area and the abiding belief that Oak Lodge can do better, and that we should have a government that is responsive to and reflective of Oak Lodge values, we've come together as a team of committed volunteers ready to spend our free time exploring other ways to do things. So in order to explore opportunities, we needed data. And in order to get data, we needed money. So we applied for a Metro Planning and Development grant in 2019, and we received that money in the fall of 2020. We were awarded $100,000 towards a consultant-led study exploring the possibility and general feasibility of additional governance options. And as you hear from the consultant team this evening, Please know that OLGP stands firmly behind this team and the report. We believe that this particular consultant team really is the best, and we are so proud of what they've been able to do for our group. And I'm going to turn it over to Beth and to Nick from here on out.
Well, Mitra, you continue to make us blush. As you can hear, as the point that Anne made, this is a grassroots effort in, I think, the most basic of ways. So this group has, they wrote a grant and they got a substantial award from Metro. They asked a lot of questions, many of which we weren't able to answer. And one of the first things we told them is, you'll come out of this with about as many questions as you have going into it, but you'll have more information. So this study started with the fiscal impacts of changing how the Oak Lodge area is governed, such as annexation or incorporation or remaining unincorporated. Obviously, it was initiated by the Oak Lodge Governance Project Steering Committee, of which Mitra and Cole are two leaders. And it was grant funded by Metro. And actually the grant was for $125,000. And we were led in this by Steve Faust from 3J Consulting, who acted as the client for this, and our project manager. So what we considered in this project is 3 different options. Oak Lodge remaining unincorporated as a community within Clackamas County, so no action, what they currently have. Oak Lodge annexing into the city of Milwaukie. Oak Lodge incorporating as a new city. We considered annexation into the city of Milwaukie rather than the city of Gladstone, simply because Milwaukie shares more services in common with Oak Lodge than Gladstone's does currently. So it was a natural way to look at potential annexation. And then Oak Lodge incorporating as a new city. So originally we started talking about this as the Oak Grove study, and it became very clear that we needed a new name that combined Oak Grove and Jennings Lodge. We selected the area here that is located between Milwaukie and Gladstone. We included a big part of Gladstone's urban growth management area in it, even though we understand that if, say, incorporation happens at some point, there'd need to be negotiations with Gladstone about that urban growth management area and what would happen, because eventually that's expected to annex into Gladstone. We did not include any of Milwaukee's urban growth management area. After discussion with city staff, it became clear that it would simply be easier in a lot of ways not to include those areas, but we could have. There's some natural areas that might have been included. So we followed along, Mitra, the name of this road that we followed along up here.
Upper Aldercrest.
Thank you. I always blank that out. At one point, people were talking about, oh, should we go out to I-205 and include all of that unincorporated area? And we decided that it was best to keep focused on Oak Grove and Jennings Lodge. And when I say we, I mean the project steering committee working with the consultants decided that together. So this information will be used in a lot of public discussions that will be coming up. Mitra will talk more about exactly how these discussions will go at the end of the presentation. But essentially the way that we're thinking about this is the Oak Lodge Governance Project is research and outreach. Then there's separate community discussions, which may not be guided by the steering committee. And in fact, probably won't be guided by the steering committee, but questions may be asked back to the steering committee where more research may be done. And then at some point you get decisions made, and it may be more than one decision, as we'll talk about at the end. So this is the first of many discussions about governance of the area. And this report provides information that can inform those discussions, but it also brings up a whole lot of other questions. So these are the service providers that we considered under each of the options. You'll see that a number of the service providers remain the same. So for water, stormwater, and sanitary sewer, the Oak Lodge Water Service District was held the same in the annexation and the unincorporation. The annexation and the incorporation, with these difference of stormwater. Stormwater is half with the service district and half with the city, the county in their transportation division. So that was an interesting thing that Nick may well talk about in a few minutes. Law enforcement was one of the key items that would be different, varying from the Clackamas County Sheriff's Department to City of Milwaukie Police Department to the incorporated city, the newly incorporated city, which might want its own police department. It also might contract back with the sheriff's office. There's a lot of different options. Fire and EMS, parks, those were all held stable with the current service providers. And then you can see that transportation, community development, and governmental administration all varied amongst the different options. We focused our analysis, as Nick will explain to you, on the ways in which some of the key services that varied across the different options. So we spent less time on the options where the services remained the same, because the answers were, the same, similar. So as we were doing this, we kept coming up with the fact that fiscal considerations were an important set of considerations, but you had this idea of broad considerations of changes in governance. And we never came up with a better term other than broad considerations. A whole bunch of things like political clout and the impact on property tax value and housing value. These are all important things that aren't really about the fiscal impacts of the governance structure. They're influenced in other ways by the governance structure. And so it was important to, even though we were focused on fiscal impacts, to talk about how these broad considerations varied amongst the three choices. And of course, we talked a lot in the report. We look at a lot the fiscal impacts and the changes to services as a result in the changes for governance. So going ahead, talking about some of what we found. When we looked at these broad considerations, and I'm going to focus on what we found as it relates more to annexation than necessary incorporation. But when you look at local control and political clout, a lot of what Mitra was just saying is really all about local control and political clout. The area is about 27,000 people ish. And when you look at it across the whole county of more than 400,000 people, that's a relatively small number of people for the whole county and just not much political clout. If you imagine if the whole area annexed into city of Milwaukie, then the area would be about half the city of Milwaukee's size. And so there would be considerably more political clout, considerably more opportunity to have influence over what was done in the study area. Whereas, of course, incorporation, the people who live there would have the highest opportunity for local control and political clout. Looking at things like community development and land use and changes in land use patterns, remaining unincorporated would change relatively little. Annexation would mean buying into the community development system that Milwaukie currently has, which is a significant community development system. The city has substantial policies around affordable housing, for instance, a fully formed comprehensive plan and policies. Policies around things like environmental quality and stormwater, for instance, are very different between the unincorporated county and city of Milwaukie. Milwaukee's made significant investments and decisions that these investments are important. So it would be important for community members in Oak Lodge that if they were going to annex, to understand what they would be annexing into. Potential impact on property values and housing cost. That's really difficult to assess. As we'll talk about property taxes here in a little while, it would be higher, I think highest under the annexation choice. But the effects on property, on property values and housing costs would really be impacted by things like the fact that the City of Milwaukee has chosen to make significant investments in affordable housing. So you've got policies that are prioritizing affordable housing and that kind of housing development. Those would certainly impact, in my opinion, positively the property values and housing costs, both renter and owner. And then finally, equity considerations. It would be a difference definitely with annexation into City of Milwaukee, because Milwaukee has made equity a high priority. So the people in Oak Lodge would understand what they were getting into in looking at the City of Milwaukee's equity policies. A lot of what might happen under an incorporated is really unknown, because the city would have to, the new city would need to develop its policies and would need to decide what it wanted to be. So I'm going to hand it over to Nick at this point to walk us through the results of the fiscal analysis.
All right, thank you, Beth. I think in your packet you have our full report, and that includes hundreds of pages and many tables, lots of calculations on this financial analysis. So we are not going to cover all of it in detail tonight. We know that it's late and this meeting is a little behind schedule, so we'll try and move through this as quickly as we can to try and get things back on track. When we're looking at the fiscal considerations of this analysis, we're talking about how much revenue would be generated in the area for the municipal services that we're studying. And that includes revenues that would be paid in terms of the taxes and fees paid by people in that area, but also revenues that come from outside of the area. For example, state shared revenue for transportation that might be based on the number of people who live here, but isn't necessarily directly paid by people living here. So we're looking at those revenues generated and also looking at the amount of funding spent in the area by those service providers. And revenues generated and money spent in the area is not necessarily the same thing for each service, for each of the different governance options that we're looking at. So we'll show some of those key results here. On the next slide, a summary of the methods. How was this fiscal analysis completed? A couple of key things to keep in mind. One, this analysis was just a snapshot in time. We looked at 1 year of budget data. We did not try to forecast how future changes like population growth, technological innovation, or inflation would wind up impacting the budgets of service providers. So certainly, if you were looking for a complete long-term study, there'd be a whole lot of change in this area that would impact the fiscal analysis we've done here. At the crux of our analysis was estimating the share of different service providers' budgets that are attributable to Oak Lodge. That's easier said than done. This is a custom area. It doesn't have a determined geography that all service providers are looking at and accounting for their costs and revenues based on that area. So we looked at their total budgets and tried to apportion the share of each line item of revenue and expenditure in terms of how much of it was associated with this custom Oak Lodge area. That required dozens and dozens of assumptions. So for example, when we're looking at something like fire service, we looked at the total number of calls for service in the area and the total number of calls for service in the entire fire district and the share of those calls that took place in this area as a way to estimate the share of their expenditures here. So each of the municipal services we looked at had a range of assumptions to try to help us estimate the share of those costs that took place here. That was particularly challenging for the city of Milwaukee because the city of Milwaukee is not providing any service here. So we're looking at the services you provide in your current boundary and then trying to extrapolate how much it might cost if you were to provide that service to this annexed area, as well as how much revenue this area might generate given your current tax and fee structure. One of the critical parts of the analysis is making assumptions on the level of service that's being provided. In general, we were assuming that a constant level of service equal to whatever the service level that is currently being provided by each service provider. So whatever the county or the city or the fire district might be doing today, we held that constant in our analysis. One major caveat on that, and Beth brought this up earlier in the presentation, is that for the option in which we were looking at a hypothetical newly incorporated city, the level of service is really a great unknown. And so for our analysis, we held that level of service constant with what the city of Milwaukie is currently providing. This wound up in these numbers showing not a whole lot of difference for several services between the city of Milwaukie and a hypothetical new city because we were assuming the similar level of service. However, in reality, this new city would have major decisions to make regarding each of the municipal services they provide and what level of service they want to provide and how much that would cost and the different fees and taxes they would need to impose to make that happen. So certainly major considerations if this community were to move forward with incorporation. And then on that last bullet point, average cost versus marginal cost, here is really where we start to get into the weeds of the technical details, but it's an important one to bring up. This analysis used an average cost approach. So if, for example, the city of Milwaukie has 24,000 police contacts every year, and if annexing Oak Lodge would add another 24,000, doubling the number of calls for service, an average cost approach assumes that the cost would also double. A marginal cost approach might say maybe the police force has extra capacity and could respond to some calls without having to add new officers. And so they could actually do it more cheaply per call. And so it wouldn't result in a doubling of the budget. Conversely, it could say that in order to serve this area, an entire new police station needs to be built. That's very expensive, and it's going to cost more than doubling the budget in order to provide service there. So a marginal cost approach can provide a more detailed, more accurate look at what these fiscal impacts might be, but it is also greatly more time-consuming and expensive to do, and not something that was within the scope of this analysis. So keep that in mind as we're reviewing all of these numbers. This was all done with an average cost approach. So
Nick, I'll also add, can you talk for a moment about the back and forth we had with a number of the service providers to get them comfortable with the assumptions?
Yes, absolutely.
Correct.
So we were looking at, close to a dozen different service providers, each with their own budgets, each with different line items. And for all of them, we were estimating the portion of those budgets that might be applicable to this area. So many assumptions, so many calculations that we definitely wanted to make sure that we had input from all of those actual service providers. So we reached out to the staff for each of the impacted districts, gave them the opportunity to give us input into the process, shared our preliminary results with them, and had some back and forth on changes that we could make to the analysis to improve it until everybody felt relatively comfortable with the results, which isn't to say everybody uniformly agrees these are the correct magic numbers, but I think everybody got to a place where they understand that these were reasonable calculations given the scope of the project. So these four services, water, wastewater, parks, and fire, they have the same service providers assumed in all three options, and so they have the same costs and revenues. We're not going to belabor any points here, though if you do read the full report, you will find that we still forecast the share of costs and revenues under each scenario, and there is some interesting information there in terms of the balance of costs and revenues within this area. For law enforcement, this was one of the more interesting services that we studied. In short, we found that if the area were to annex into the city of Milwaukie or incorporate as a new city, it's expected that the area would need to pay more in property taxes to pay for law enforcement. But despite paying more for taxes, the actual expenditures on law enforcement in the area would be expected to decrease. And despite that decrease in expenditures, the level of service provided in the area would be expected to remain the same or even improve in that scenario. So all of those key conclusions sound a little contradictory, so I think I will take a little time to unpack that. When we looked at what's currently happening today, the areas served by Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, we found that 24% of the calls for service for the sheriffs occur in this area, which actually matched almost exactly with 24% of the patrol staff that they have assigned to this area. So when we look at the cost of local law enforcement provided by the sheriff's office, we took 24% of those costs countywide and assigned them to this area. That amounts to about $14 million per year that the county spends on law enforcement here. Most of the revenue comes from property taxes for the sheriff's office, and those property taxes are higher in unincorporated areas like this, but a lot of the general fund taxes that the entire county pays goes to pay for law enforcement. So when we looked at how much revenue this area is currently contributing to the county for the cost of law enforcement, it was significantly lower than the $14 million per year that looks like it's spent here. If this was annexed to the city of Milwaukee, we looked at the current cost that the city of Milwaukee has per call that you serve. And it wound up with a significantly lower cost per police contact than the sheriff's office. Instead of $14 million a year, it looked like this area could be served by the city of Milwaukee for closer to $8 million per year. So a striking difference in the cost to serve the area. We went over these numbers at a high level with the city of Milwaukee staff, and no complaints about how we broke down the budget. Also, staff strongly agreed that the service provided by the Milwaukee Police Department is equal to or superior than what is provided by the sheriff's office, just based on the expectations of a true city police department versus a county sheriff's office. So unclear exactly what's causing this discrepancy. The county sheriff's office did not want to comment on this study. We do offer in the report some suggestions for what may be partially contributing to this. Nonetheless, it does look like there would be a lower cost of service if this area were to be annexed by the city of Milwaukee. And yet, despite that lower cost of service, again, the city of Milwaukee staff definitely feels that they can provide an equal or better service in the area. As I said, though, that even though the cost of service decreases here, the $8.5 million cost would need to be paid for by this area through property taxes. And so that is more than the property taxes currently being paid for in this area for law enforcement. Property tax rates are higher in the city than they are in unincorporated areas, and a large part of that is to pay for public safety. And so that would be true here. There would be higher cost to the area, but lower expenditures, overall estimated to be equal or better service. Again, several contradictory things, but that's the way that we broke down the budget data here. On community development, not a whole lot of difference between the three scenarios in terms of the amount of revenues and expenditures, but we do believe that there is a big difference in what those expenditures feel like. So even though the county might be spending a similar amount on community development type activities within this area, ones that are really focused of countywide scope versus ones that are focused on the local community just feel more impactful when it's a city-led project that's a smaller scope. All right, so the next slide, Beth, is stormwater. Stormwater is another one where there were very large differences between the scenarios. Stormwater is jointly provided here by the county and Oak Lodge Water Service District. Oak Lodge Water Service District provides watershed protection. Those costs are assumed to be the same in every scenario, and they are relatively low. The county is responsible for stormwater management, and if this were to be annexed, that would now become the city's responsibility. The county does not specifically call out stormwater management as a separate part of their budget. It is subsumed within their transportation budget. Most of their work on stormwater is transportation staff unclogging storm drains in the area when customers complain about it. If the city were to annex the area, the city of Milwaukee actually has a significant stormwater management plan funded with dedicated revenue streams, tracked in a budget where you can actually see how much is being spent on these activities. So if this area were to be annexed, it would now be subject to those same programs, those same fee structures, significantly higher costs to the area, but in theory also significantly higher level of service here for stormwater. And the revenues generated here would certainly be significant for the overall citywide stormwater efforts. We estimated that the expenditures for stormwater in the annexation scenario would increase from about $1 million today with the county managed approach to $8 million per year in the annexation approach. In the third scenario, where this area may incorporate as its own city, it's really uncertain what level of stormwater quality and level of service will be chosen there. One final point to highlight on stormwater is that in terms of how much actually might get spent in this area, what would be really helpful would be having a stormwater master plan or capital projects list. And there is none of that right now, identifying where there are deficiency in the system and where capital projects are needed. That sort of a document would be very helpful for anyone trying to decide what it's going to cost to provide stormwater service in this area long term. All right, so for transportation, significant differences across this scenario as well. In the current scenario, revenues generated in the area are estimated to somewhat exceed the amount that the county spends in this area. So a little bit of money is being generated here, largely through state shared revenues that's being spent elsewhere in the county. That's because this area has a higher share of the county's population than it does of the county's road network. Despite there not being a huge difference between those costs and revenues in the area, most of the time that the county does spend here is out there unclogging drains. It's not really on the sort of transportation maintenance and improvements that a lot of community members might want. And so it might feel like there's even a bigger discrepancy currently in the revenues generated versus the amount of funds spent in the area. If it's annexed to the city, revenues generated here would increase substantially. That's because of the state shared revenues for transportation that are based on the population of cities. So this would result in a large cash influx to the city of Milwaukie if it were to annex this area. Again, this area has a relatively high share of population than it does street network when compared to the existing city of Milwaukie boundary. And so that does suggest that if this area were to annex, it would be bringing in more revenue to the city of Milwaukie than it would take the city of Milwaukie to spend in the area to maintain it. That's again on an average cost basis. There might be specific projects in this area on a marginal analysis, things that should have been done years ago that haven't been done, that might make that equation a little bit different. When we look at the final solution, if this area were to be, or the final scenario here, if the area were to incorporate, we actually found that in that scenario, it would have the highest amount of expenditures for this Oak Lodge area. And that's because all the funding that is generated here through the state shared revenues and other sources would be required to be spent in the area. There's no other streets that it can be siphoned off to. And so that would be one of the scenarios that this service would have or this would be one of the services where the incorporation scenario would lead to the highest level of expenditures for this area. The last service we have here is administration. The analysis found that annexing to Milwaukie would have higher costs for administration than the other scenarios, with unincorporated being the lowest cost for administration. That being said, a lot of that did come down to this average cost approach again, where in general, a city that's providing more services is going to have higher administrative costs than if this were a standalone city providing a much smaller portfolio of services. However, if you were to look at a marginal cost approach, we expect to find that the city of Milwaukie already has capacity to govern. Annexing new land doesn't dramatically increase your administrative costs. You already have your city council, you already have your city hall. So there's a lot of economies of scale that could be realized there, reducing the number below what is in this study. And likewise, that same factor would negatively be impacting the numbers that we show in the incorporation scenario. They have no existing city council. They'd have to create that from scratch. They have no city hall that would need to be built from scratch. All those things would be making it more expensive than what's shown here. And so ultimately, I don't think in reality there'd be much of a difference between those two scenarios, annexing or incorporating, though certainly both of them would likely be more expensive for administration than the status quo, where the county is providing that service and not really spending a very large effort on the administrative side of things.
So I wanted that there was a lot in that, and I wanted to clarify. So in an apples to apples scenario where the same amount of services, same level of services were being provided in the new city of Oak Grove, it would be the same or more expensive than those same services provided by the city of Milwaukee because we have the existing infrastructure already. Is that what I think I heard?
So that is what my suspicion is. The analysis was using a average cost approach due to the limitations of our data. So the analysis showed that it's more expensive in the city of Milwaukee, but the analysis lists those reasons why we think in a more detailed, nuanced, marginal cost approach, that the costs we're showing in Milwaukee would decrease, the costs we're showing in an incorporated city would increase, and I suspect that they would become fairly even. And it may be, if we did that analysis, that we would find that the economies of scale, the existing capacity that Milwaukee has, makes it a less expensive option. But again, that would require doing a true marginal cost approach, which was beyond the scope of this study.
Okay, thank you.
The last two slides to wrap it up on the financial piece of things are looking at property taxes. Right now, this area, if you're in a typical home, which we are now showing a home here with an assessed value of $350,000, that might correspond to a real market value of around $500,000. And we all know how fast those home prices have been going up in recent years. But for a home of that value, in the unincorporated area today, that tax bill would be around $6,300. If that property were to be annexed into the city and paying city tax rates, that tax bill would be $7,300 a year. So that's a difference of $1,000, roughly a 15% increase over what the current bill is. We show that the hypothetical new city would be in between there, closer to the unincorporated rate. But again, that's based on the specific assumptions in this study. And depending on the choices that a new city would make in terms of the level of service and what types of services they want to have, it could be significantly different than that. And the last slide shows those rates in sort of context of the region. This shows every city that at least partially overlaps Clackamas County. So Portland's on the list, and everybody associates that with Multnomah County, but they do have a small slice of Clackamas County as well. We can see that Milwaukee does have one of the higher tax rates in the region when it's factored in with all the special districts that are overlapping the area as well. This new city would be sort of in the middle of the pack if it were to incorporate. And I also wanted to point out, not on this list, because this is just a list of cities, that the current tax rate in the area, I believe $18.11 per thousand, would put you right somewhere around where Oregon City is on this chart. So a little bit below the halfway point of what we're looking at here, but actually more expensive than some incorporated areas in the county. So that was the lengthy, tried to speed through it as quick as I could, presentation on the fiscal impacts. I think Beth just has a couple more slides before we wrap up our presentation. And thank you for bearing with me through all that technical analysis.
So speaking to conclusions and next steps, one of our findings from this is a little bit of an obvious one, but we didn't think about it until we were partially through it, that different sub areas within Oak Lodge may choose different governance options. And so it seems to us unlikely that all of Oak Lodge is going to decide to annex into Milwaukee. And there are obviously some areas like the our urban growth management area that is in Gladstone's urban growth management area, that would be a much more nuanced discussion, that it's not at all clear that that could happen. But it seems unlikely that all of Oak Lodge will annex or request for annex, and that parts of the area, the people who are living there may prefer annexation. Some people may prefer to stay unincorporated, and there may be a sizable enough core that a city incorporates in that area. We found that all three governance options, they all appear financially feasible. I think this is a little bit surprising to our steering committee. They thought that something might come out of this that showed that, say, incorporation was absolutely impossible, financially speaking, or that annexation would be really unpalatable for City of Milwaukee because not enough revenue would be generated in this area. But all three, at the level of analysis we've done, they appear financially feasible. And then Nick has mentioned it a few times, but let's not forget that level of service depends on policy choices. So the City of Milwaukee has made some very specific policy choices. Unincorporated Clackamas County has essentially had other policy choices made for it. And then some other findings are that the estimated property taxes for a median price single family home would be highest under the annexation option. That is perhaps not surprising when we look at the policy choices about level of service in City of Milwaukee. It may well be that a hypothetical new city would have higher property taxes because they may well opt for higher levels of service. And there's certainly some types of services that seem a little neglected, if not more than a little neglected in the study area, especially things like certain types of transportation and stormwater facilities. So as I started this discussion, fiscal considerations, they're just one of dozens of criteria that go into informing discussions about the preferred governance options. But at least this information about what might it cost me is on the table as part of the discussions. I'm going to hand it back to Mitra or Cole to handle our last couple of slides.
Thanks, Beth. And thank you, counselors, for sticking with this. Really appreciative of you all being dedicated to this. Really appreciate Nick, Beth, and the entire OLGP team for dedicating so much time and energy to this effort. It truly has been a Herculean lift. And I feel like we have just gotten to the end of the first marathon before we start the next one, because I get the exciting opportunity to tell you all about what comes next. And that really can be summed up in 3 different things: community conversations, more research, and then outreach from that research that will hopefully get a critical mass of our neighbors talking about and thinking about governance. I want to point back to the graph on the right, which Beth alluded to earlier, that really outlines what we see the Oak Lodge Governance Project is doing. We believe that we are creating and helping facilitate the research that will feed the outreach, that will then move toward community discussions, that will then feed probably more outreach and research, because there's going to be plenty more to go, and likely can result in any or a combination of the 3 scenarios outlined in the report. I want it to be really clearly stated on the record that we do not see this as an all or nothing approach. It will likely be various parts of the Oak Lodge community making decisions about what they want to see for their future areas. So whether it's remaining unincorporated, annexing, or incorporating, very much open and will only happen with the community that discusses it. What comes next really is, actually, Beth, if you could advance to the next slide, the community outreach and engagement that we are already working toward. In the past year or so, Oak Lodge Governance Project and our steering committee has invested a lot of time and resources into helping set the stage for getting the word out to our community. We've created a website. We have an active presence on social media accounts. We have a MailChimp newsletter that goes out usually at least on an every 2-week basis. And we also have community information sessions to start priming the pump and the conversation around governance in our community. Our hope is that as we move into this next phase of the work, we can all work as a community to start to get a better sense of what it is that we want, and a better sense of those community values that will drive the next set of decisions that we have. We're excited to be talking to our neighbors about this. We're really excited that the City of Milwaukee is willing to engage in the discussion about what this might look like as our great neighbors to the north. And we really look forward to continuing this conversation, because that's really how we see this next phase of work, is a lot of community conversation. So thank you. And with that, I think we've got time for questions.
I'm going to stop the share unless we need something back.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was wondering if we might have just a little bit more explanation about, I understand that our, if some of the folks in the Oak Lodge areas wanted to annex into Milwaukie, under our current structure, there's actually an obstacle there within Milwaukee's code. And I wondered if we might give a little bit more information about why that is, so that folks have a better understanding of that, or at least a general understanding about that.
Are you referring to the fact that the area would need to be part of the urban growth management area to even be considered for annexed?
Right, exactly.
And are you asking us as to why that is the case?
Well, I wondered whether, I guess maybe I was asking a combination of our, I know we've got Laura on, we've got Justin on, we've got Ann and others who might have a little bit more specific information about what a process would be. Like what would Milwaukie need to do in order to even accommodate that question?
From what I understand, I would think that we would have to negotiate the urban growth management agreement first step. If there was direction headed that way, then we would have to go in and renegotiate the UGA.
We would have to renegotiate that because of requirements in our code or because of some state law requirements?
It would have to be because it's state law, because we can't pull anybody else into the city without actually having that be part of our urban growth management area.
So I have sort of some questions on specific things that your study outlined. Talking about transportation, when it looked at the Milwaukie annexation option, it said highest revenues, medium expenditures, city would impose additional fees to fund transportation, but the area would pay more in fees than expected to be spent in the study area. And I was curious how that was arrived at, because we, particularly our SAFE program, endeavors to provide good walking and biking facilities throughout the city, and that would also remain the same for the Oak Grove area, which I noticed was one of your areas of concern. And in my experience of Oak Grove, Jennings Lodge, there are even less sidewalks and bike paths than the city of Milwaukie currently has, let alone what we're going to be putting in the next 3 or 4 years. So I would actually assume the opposite. I would assume that to bring the Oak Grove area up to the same standard as the rest of the city of Milwaukie, we would end up spending more money there than we collected there.
Yeah, so Mayor, I can answer that question. That does, there's a reason why I wanted to emphasize the rather technical point of this being an average cost analysis versus a marginal cost analysis. So on average, we looked at, we assumed that the amount of expenditures the city would make for its transportation system would be based on the miles of street that the city maintains. And that this area would be bringing in more assessed value, more population, more households relative to the existing city limits than it is bringing in streets. And so that's why it looks like it's bringing in more money than would be spent here. But that analysis only holds up if every street in the existing city and the annexation area really do need the same level of treatment, the same expenditures. And we know that's not true. Some areas need more than others. In order to really tell, if the city wanted to move down the road of this conversation, and if the community wanted to move down the road of this conversation, I think it would make sense to do some marginal cost analysis where you would want to look and say, what are the quality of these streets out there? What improvements are needed? How do those improvements and those needs stack up to all the other needs that we already have in Milwaukee's existing boundary? And when we compare that project list of what needs to be done, does it look like the Oak Lodge annexation area really needs more resources or less resources than the amount that it's bringing in. And I wouldn't be surprised to see an answer on either side of that equation. But the answer we have in this report is purely based on that average cost analysis and recognizing that this area has relatively few streets and a relatively high number of people and tax base.
Okay, I'm guessing that the answer to the next question may be similar. It had to do with potential impacts on property values and housing costs. The report says it's difficult to definitively analyze the impact of annexation on property values and housing costs. Such an analysis is complex, and separating out the impact of governance on all of the factors that affect property values is difficult. Annexation would likely change the property tax profile of annexed areas. The change would impact property values and the housing costs and could reduce the relative affordability of ownership compared to rental for individuals. It may also make apartments less valuable for property owners because they're paying more property tax and could potentially impact feasibility of new construction. If that were the case, then you would think more apartment complexes would currently be being planned and built in the unincorporated area of Oak Grove Jennings Lodge because property taxes are the lowest there. And yet the reverse is actually true, where thousands, literally, of apartment units are in the process of either being planned or constructed in the city of Milwaukee. And to my knowledge, virtually none in the Oak Grove Jennings Lodge area. So how does that analysis jibe with sort of reality?
So I'll first bring up existing zoning and what's allowed in existing zoning. And we didn't do analysis specifically about that. But an awful lot of the study area doesn't allow multifamily housing. So I would say that that is certainly part of the answer there. And then I would say that another part of the answer is simply the housing policy choices that that Milwaukee has made are supportive of the type of developments that you're talking about. So it's supportive of multifamily development, for instance, especially affordable multifamily development. Nick, do you have more you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I would say that is purely because this report did choose to hold the land use patterns constant in the three scenarios. Snapshot in time, holding land use patterns constant, just so that we could get our arms around how much does the governance option on its own affect the fiscal impacts here. But we know the governance option doesn't just affect fiscal impacts. A different governance, being part of the city of Milwaukee, should and most likely will have a profound impact on the zoning here and the allowable land use patterns. And that change in what's allowed certainly could have a major difference in the type of development, the number of apartments that get built in the area, the affordability of those homes. But most of those changes would have to do with how the land use patterns would differ under the governance options and not due to the fiscal impacts of the governance options themselves. So it just has to do with the narrow scope of this analysis.
So I mean, as to multifamily, I guess, I mean, the idea that, you know, that annexation would bring change, you know, may be true. But as to the vast swaths of what it is, which is single family housing areas, the unincorporated has the same requirements as we do about HB 2001, right? So I thought the idea in your earlier slide that there would be little change in the community development land use by staying with the county is just simply not true, because it's going to be a state dictate that's going to change.
So our opinion in a lot of places where development has already occurred about what will happen from House Bill 2001, it of course depends on the local property values and the local housing economics. But in a lot of places, not much is going to change where you've got a lot of development. So existing neighborhoods aren't going to very rapidly redevelop into, say, fourplexes or townhouses. That'll happen in areas where it makes financial sense, where it's feasible for that to happen. But I wouldn't necessarily expect that in a place like Oak Lodge, where there's simply not the policies that are necessary to support that. So the transportation policies, other sorts of policies that are necessary to support that. If you hold that idea constant for an awful lot of places, that change from House Bill 2001 will happen more quickly where you've got more greenfield development area and where you've got more potential for redevelopment pressures, and will happen more slowly in established neighborhoods where redevelopment is just less financially feasible, then you're not going to really see a lot of change from House Bill 2001 in a lot of Oak Lodge. And when you talk about multifamily and you talk about big changes, you're really talking about the big changes where you get larger scale multifamily development than necessarily fourplexes and townhouses. So where you're looking at multi-story multifamily buildings. And by the way, I'm really enjoying your cat. Thank you.
Yeah, I give up on keeping him under control. I had one other question. I don't know if you had more on the housing. Go ahead.
No, the next one I had was different. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, my other question was the 27,000 population kind of came as a surprise to me when I looked at your report last week. And because we've always heard this thing that if the unincorporated part, urban unincorporated Clackamas County would incorporate, it would be the largest city in Clackamas County. And I guess that is, the wider area to 202 and beyond I-205. So it's a bigger study area than you took on here. But I wanted to know, one, do you have I have a follow-up question to this, but my first question is, do you have an estimate of what the population is in the Milwaukie UGMA portion that you did not include in your study?
No, we don't have that. And our estimate was simply based on the number of dwelling units in the area, because that's something that's known from assessors data, and then actually using the average household size in the city of Milwaukie, because that was our best average.
Okay. And so then is there a number below? I mean, I assume, talking about economies of scale and talking about, what's the thing that's not average costing, but marginal? Okay. The bigger the population, the more cost effective it is to establish a new city. I mean, as a general rule, the less cost per resident or whatever, the costs are distributed more. Has there been any sort of study about what the optimal size for an incorporating new city? And also any kind of take on below what size incorporation would not be really feasible at all?
So Beth, I can jump in. I don't know that it's possible that someone has studied that. We haven't, but I think the variables are so different from one city to the next. Which specific services are going to be included? Some have fire, some have police, some have parks, others don't. Each of those are going to have their own considerations for what makes it the ideal threshold for what you could serve. And then also the policy choices on the level of service. Some small communities, rather than building a city hall, might choose to rent space in a vacant commercial building. That can be really cost effective, but maybe doesn't become reasonable once you exceed a certain size. So I imagine for each service that you offer, there's going to be different price points that you hit as your population goes up, and the specifics of your community will dictate what size is most ideal for you.
And I would also mention that I've worked with cities that are 400 people, where they were truly functional cities. I'm thinking about the city of Maupin, which is out on its own in Central Oregon. And that's a small functional city. So pretty small can work in some cases. And they have their own little city hall. They're a scrappy little city.
But okay. But I mean, that's not really an urban area. I guess I feel like there's more services, more issues. I don't know. In an urban area, maybe I'm prejudicial in that regard. Maybe I'm not giving them a fair shake in that regard. But I guess just thinking about, where you guys started with, it's, this is not all or nothing. It's not, people, different parts of the area might choose different things. If, 5,000 people they wanted to pursue annexation, and that drops the number left. I mean, at some point, accreting people through annexation drops the viability of incorporation. Is that true or false?
Well, let me answer your question that you may be asking. Rather than answer that question, if the city was, if the area was really considering incorporating, it would need to do an incorporation study. And in that incorporation study, Nick, you can correct me if I'm wrong, would be consideration of the financial feasibility of the city.
Yeah, that's right. But and Councilor Beatty, to your point, I suspect it's possible. I think that for citizens who might want to incorporate, if the entire area is a blank unincorporated canvas, they certainly have more options to explore incorporation than if that area has become a patchwork of little sub areas that have annexed to Milwaukie and Gladstone or wherever else. So certainly I think the ability to incorporate is better now than it might be in the future if there have been mass annexations.
Agreed.
Thank you.
So I can't find the spot in the report, but I remember reading something about in order to receive shared revenues, state shared revenues, you have to provide at least 4 services, right? And I was wondering, does contracting with the sheriff's office for police service count as providing a service?
I think that it does. I can't remember the specifics of that. There are very few cities that are on the cusp like this that are only providing 3.5 services. In our analysis, stormwater is the half service that I'm referencing here because it is also provided by the Oak Lodge Water Service District. So these issues haven't come up that often because many cities provide more than the 4 services that are required. This is a unique situation where there's already a lot of special districts in place that are providing a lot of the basic municipal services that the state's asking for.
So the question that arose in my mind when reading that, I believe you included police as one of the 4 services.
Yeah.
And yet you had the tax rate that a potential tax rate of $2 per mil. I hope I'm remembering this right. I'm sorry. Compared to our 413 or whatever ours is. And even contracting, I think, is going to cost more than that. But certainly if you're creating a police department, there's no way you do that on $2 per mil. I mean, half of our general fund is police department, more than.
Yeah, so the tax base here was relatively strong. And we have so few services that this area is looking to provide. And in the average cost analysis that we looked at, the administrative costs wound up being so low that all those factors combined for the low tax rate that's speculated here. Whereas the city of Milwaukie has other services that it's providing. As you mentioned, half or more than half is going to public safety, but you still have 45% of the rate that's going elsewhere. So I agree that the study, the dollar shown here is the product of all of the internal calculations in the spreadsheet on how much we needed at this one snapshot in time using an average cost approach for this limited book of services. I think, as Beth mentioned, if this area did want to incorporate, they would need to do that incorporation study. They would need to look at the nitty-gritty marginal costs of all the services that they actually want to provide, and they need to have the community conversations about what the level of service is that they want. And based on all those conversations, it could certainly wind up being with a significantly higher tax rate than what we've shown here. I mean, I think certainly a community that's going to want the same level of service for the same types of services as Milwaukie, we would intuitively expect that their tax rate would also be close to Milwaukee's.
And New City would have a whole set of startup services, which are in its own particularly difficult to fund.
Yeah, I'm just trying to wrap my head around how the heck you do this, right? Because in Oregon, with our uniquely stupid concept of the permanent tax rate, you know, you make a decision based on certain assumptions and you create that permanent tax rate, and then you go, oh, geez, no, we were wrong. We changed our mind. We do want a more robust police force, or we do want, you know, better development services, or, you know, whatever the thing is, and then you're in trouble. Then you're doing the crazy levies every 5 years to function.
Yeah, absolutely right. If there were to be a new city created here, the public would have one vote where they decide what the tax rate is for this area, and they're setting it forever, or until the legislature finally fixes our property tax system.
Yeah, which is probably forever. All right. Well, it's fascinating. I wish the best for the folks in the Oak Lodge study area. I personally do believe that people are far better served in the city, in urban areas, than they are in unincorporated county areas. And I believe that the county as a whole is better served as well. If I were king of Oregon, I would disallow urban unincorporated areas because I think it just creates a whole raft of problems, not the least of which is really poor representation at that level. Any other thoughts, questions?
The best way to stay at least informed about the next steps for you all, I imagine you'd sign up for the notices and check out the website. I am really interested in seeing that process move forward. I think, you know, I think we touched on this when we talked a little bit, Cole and Mitra, you know, however the areas decide, you know, whichever options folks choose, I'd hate to see, you know, sort of the fate of Damascus anywhere. And so, you know, I think that your next steps are probably the most crucial. And I hope, you know, I just want to be able to, you know, I just want to stay informed of this process, because I think, you know, in addition to sort of the urban growth management area, that agreement, you know, there might be some other things that the city of Milwaukie, you know, needs to stay abreast of and be thinking about for whatever options, especially an annexation option. You know, there are some things that we would need to be thinking about and that you all would need to be asking of us, in addition to just more information that we just haven't even really, we haven't discussed as a council, we haven't really discussed in this community at all. So there would be a lot more that has to happen in addition to you all having a conversation amongst yourselves. But thank you. This has been really fun. I mean, you know, just as a bystander, sort of watching you all do this.
Yeah, thank you. And we're really grateful to be able to have this opportunity. We are aware that we have so many conversations ahead of us. We are at the very baby beginning of a years-long marathon. So there is no assumption on our part that this is something that we just like get to throw on a ballot in 18 months and solve our problems. We know that we're in it for the long haul, and we are really looking for sustained change. And also, I know that we have talked about the really the engagement process that the city of Milwaukee conducted through their visioning process, and really just how robust that was. And we're going to, hopefully be able to connect a little bit more and learn from that process from you, so that we can take some of your leadership and bring it to our area as well, in terms of being able to engage more folks as effectively as you did.
I did just want to call out a thank you to Cole for posting the sign up in the chat. We'll make sure that we add that into the minutes if anybody comes back to this conversation and is trying to figure out how to sign up for the updates.
And I just want to add a thank you to the Governance Project leadership. You all are really inspiring in your concern and care for your community, and you are really stepping up. And I love seeing that. I'm so glad to be your physical neighbors, not too far away. And yes, please do stay in touch, and always happy to answer questions or be a resource.
I just want to say, Nick went to high school with my wife, so she wanted me to say go Quakers. And this whole process is super fascinating. So I can't wait to see how it works out, because this whole unincorporated annex incorporation, it's really fascinating.
Thank you for the opportunity this evening.
Welcome. Thank you for presenting.
Certainly.
With that, I do believe I would entertain a motion, just double checking, making sure I'm not wrong.
You're not wrong.
Yep. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.
Good night.